Hello and welcome to the FATBOSS Guide to the Stone Guard's 10-man heroic in the Mogu'Shan vaults.
Hello.
It's a lovely way to start the instance, honestly, on heroic. It's really, really good. I do like it.
The encounter is very much the same as normal, but there is one new mechanic that does kind of change the feel of the fight, and it does make it feel like a heroic fight, like how it should. And it's an easy way to start off.
So if you haven't seen the normal mode guide to this encounter, then please do click on the annotation on your screen now, as we won't really be covering like all the individual bosses' abilities, because they're exactly the same as they are on normal.
Now for this fight you want to bring 2 tanks, 3 healers, and a mixture of DPS, melee and range just as good as each other really. You could argue that ranged is slightly better with the Jasper chains, because then obviously you don't have to sit in melee when you do have the chains, but your setup shouldn't matter too much, as long as you don't stack a shit ton of melee, or, you know, you should be okay. So the main difference on heroic is that there is a lot of damage on your tanks. The stone guards themselves will hit a lot harder. You'll also only have 3 stone guards rather than having the full lot like you do on, say, 25-man, for example, and they will change on a weekly rotation just like they do on normal. Now, because of the massive increase in damage that the tanks are taken, you're given the option to use these crystals on the side. Now, these crystals that spawn, they do absolutely nothing apart from when you click on them. When you click on them, you get a debuff that has 10 stacks. Now, you drop these stacks by running over the plain floor tiles. When you move over a plain floor tile, it will turn white, and you can basically paint the floor. That's how it works.
It's lovely.
Every time you paint a floor tile, you'll gain 1% damage increase and 1% spirit.
Yeah, this is so essential to the fight, because you do need a big amount of damage for this fight, and the amount of damage the tanks are taking, and the raid, to be honest, you do need to spam quite a lot. So the more you paint, you start getting really high stacks for this, so your spirits increase by a fuck ton, so it really does help out, and it's very, very essential that you have a good painter.
Now, while you have this debuff, you will be taking damage, so it's important that your healers do heal the people who do have that debuff. And the best players to take this debuff really are people who can move and deal damage at the exact same time. We sort of paint around 100 tiles, but you know, you can paint as many as you want. You can paint up the whole entire fucking room if you want, which would give you an absurd amount of spirit and an absurd amount of damage.
Now, unfortunately, you can't keep your pretty paintings throughout the whole encounter, because at 70% and 40%, one of the Guardians will cast Power Down, and literally it does what it says on the tin. It powers down all of your tiles, and it does nothing else. It doesn't do any damage or anything. You just need to go and paint as quickly as you can again, because, of course, your healers need to keep their mana up during this fight. So the quicker you can get those tiles painted again, the better your healers will do.
Now, a few things to keep in mind for the people who you do decide to go paint. You need to make sure that the pathways are kind of kept clear. You want to keep your raid standing on sort of like the mat in the middle of the room, the very large carpet. You want to kind of stay around that area, because you want to keep the area where you're trying to light up the tiles, you want to keep it clear of cobalt mines, you want to keep it clear of the amethyst pools. It's very, very important that you do that, because otherwise the people who are going to do the crystals are going to get a bit fucked. And they're going to have to run to very far away places to try and light up the room. One thing to also note is that the people who are using the crystals can also get Jasper chains, and in a worst case scenario, one person using a crystal on the right hand side of the room can be linked with a person who's on the left hand side of the room. And at this point you just want to run to each other as quick as possible. There's no other way of dealing with this apart from if Jasper is using his own petrification. If the Jasper is doing petrify on the raid, then obviously you can stand apart and it doesn't matter, and the Jasper chains will drop. If you are linked with someone who is running the crystals, well, ideally you should run with them. Even if you're a melee and you need to be DPSing the boss, you stop DPSing the boss and you run with the person with the crystal. The most important thing is getting these stacks, not so much for damage but for the healers. The enraged timer isn't very tight. Now, in this particular mode in heroic, if the overload goes off and the incorrect petrify stack is up, it will one-shot you. It does a huge amount of damage in heroic. And one thing that wasn't really cleared up in normal mode was how to tank these, because some people were having difficulty or whatever, so I'm going to explain it hopefully in a way that you can understand. Okay, so in this image you see here now on screen, there is 2 tanks. There's the tank 1 and tank 2. Tank 1 will only have 1 of the bosses on him, and tank 2 will always have 2 bosses on him. And the bosses I've just named A, B and C. It can be used as any of the mobs, it doesn't matter which one's which. Now, when you initially pull the boss, obviously all the mobs will have 0% energy. Around the 10% energy mark on the 2 that are together, that's when the first petrification comes in. In this example, we're going to say that the petrification is from mob A. So Mob A, which is on 0% energy, needs to be taunted by the second tank, and the first tank needs to taunt either B or C away. That's in this example. Let's say that he taunts B. So B goes to tank 1, and tank 2 has A and C. You want A to go up to around 50% energy, and at this point C will be on around 60% energy, and B will obviously still be on 10 because, you know, it's on his own, he's not going to get any energy. And now you want to switch C with B. So now you have A at 50% energy, B at 10% energy, and C on the outside on his own on 60% energy. This is when you now want to just leave them, let them overload. So A will go to 100%, B will go to 60%, and C is already on 60%. The overload will happen, and then you repeat. 10% energy later, you'll have another one. Let's say, in this case, it's on C. So C is out on its own, it's on 60% energy. You've got A now on 10% energy, and you've got B on 70% energy. Obviously, because B has the highest percentage of energy out of the two, between A and B, you want to taunt B out the raid so it's on its own, and you want C to go with A. You let the overload happen, C will go to 100%, A will be on around 50%, and B will be still on 70%. The overload happens, 10% energy later, let's say it now goes on B. So B's on 70%, A would be on 60%, and C would be on 10%. So obviously, A being the highest one, you taunt A out, so A is on its own, and B is now with C. So A's on 60% out on its own, B's on 70% with C, which is on 10%. You let the overload happen, so A's on 60%, B would be on 100%, and C will be on 40%. 10 energy later, when the new Petrify comes in, let's say it's now on C. So you've still got A on 60, which is out on its own. You've got B would now be on 10, and C is now on 50. So you'd want to keep them together because, yeah, it's an ideal situation. So A stays out on its own, and it will remain at 60. B will go up to 60, and C will go up to 100 and overload. You then wait 10 more energy for the next Petrify stacks to come in. A would be on 60, B would be on 70, and let's say, for example, it's now B. So B would be on 70%, C would be on 10%, and A would be on 60%. You then just, you'd leave them together again because it's another ideal situation. B would go to 100% overload, C would be on 40%, and A would still remain at 60, and yeah, they'd overload. You then wait another 10%, and you can see where I'm going with this. You basically just switch them around. You constantly keep switching them with whichever one's got the lowest energy. And you'll notice that none of them really will go higher than 70% unless they're actually overloading. If it does switch, so you are going above 70% or you're getting close to 80%, it shouldn't be a big deal because it will always go back down again. The energy of the one that isn't overloading that's next to the one that should be overloading, that energy on that one shouldn't really go, it shouldn't fluctuate between above 70. If it does go above 70, then it shouldn't go over it by a lot. It should go up to 80 or 90 like maximum, and even 90 is pushing it a little bit, but it'll always go back down. So you really shouldn't worry about this, and that's probably the easiest way I can explain it without sort of using cuddly toys and stuff like that, but I'm sure you'll manage fine with that.
So as long as your tanks can tank properly, as Loz explained, and you can light up the tiles like a boss, doing lovely paintings, the fight is actually really quite simple. It's still a really nice way to start the instance, as we said before.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, it's good. Lovely.
So thanks for watching. If this guide did help you out, then please do drop us a like. It helps us out a lot. And make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe.
And if you would like to see any of our other 10-man heroic guides, then please do click on the annotations on your screen now, and that will take you right over to those videos using the magic of YouTube.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.